I call Catherine Delahunty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It now seems that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for the Department of Conservation to uphold its fundamental purpose, because it's now easier under this bill to log the conservation land than private land. Talk about perverse incentives. It's clear that the people who put this bill up have no interest or ability to talk about the cycles of nature and really don't care. During the Minister's last speech on the bill, there was no reference to anything to do with nature, no reference to anything to do with ecology, no reference to the impact of what happens when trees die and become part of the natural cycle. I'm not sure whether because he's utterly uninformed, I find that hard to believe, but because he just doesn't care, and that's not what this bill is about. This bill should be called the Trojan Horse Bill, because this Trojan horse, as he was happy to confirm, is opening up the whole of the conservation estate to multiple uses and potential further logging of trees in various states all over the country if his research shows it's worthwhile. So there is a level of disingenuousness, and there's also a blatant agenda that he's quite comfortable with. But what he's not saying is that he's broken the consensus. He's saying he's allowed to change the Conservation Act, but he's not prepared to go through a select committee process. Actually, no minister has the right to just change the law without going through the select committee, has no right to do this and then say that they represent conservation. It's extraordinarily disingenuous to say that this bill will help the West Coast. It's full of deliberately loose drafting that cannot be monitored. It's going to create an incredible burden on the Department of Conservation and the Director General, and as my colleague Mr Prosser pointed out, it may also lead to extremely dodgy and unfair decision making behind closed doors. Now, I fear for the department in their wonderful new role trying to manage this purpose, because they've got enough to do. It's going to cost them, it's going to distract them, and it's going to put them in an invidious position vis-a-vis their community and vis-a-vis the environment. But that's no problem to the government, because there's a political game to be played here, and it's being paid for the benefit of the vote and the election, not for the benefit of the environment or the community. It's also extraordinarily disingenuous for the Minister to say that there's been the bill was shared with the House. Actually, that's a disgrace. The bill turned up a couple of days ago, and we didn't see all the detail, and there has been no proper process, and we didn't even get to debate Part 2 properly. We had a shortened Part 2 because everyone else decided they were sick of it and they wanted to go home. Well, actually, we're not sick of it and we don't want to go home. We want to fight this because it's wrong. And because it's bizarre in the 21st century to attempt to set up an export business in native logging which relies on pillaging the conservation estate. That's bizarre. That's an odd thing to do, and it's a terrible legacy for this government, and it's against the will of many people. So all around the world, I'm sure it would be possible to convince people to buy Rumu because it's a beautiful timber, and especially if you can say it's legal. And those of us who work trying to stop the illegal logging of Indigenous timber are going to be even more undercut by this delightful piece of legislation trying to manufacture a new industry. It's not about the people here. As the bill clearly says, it's about export. Export to whom, for why, for what, and what about the consequences? No responsibility here. Let's throw up our hands and say we're just nice people doing a nice thing with a bit of wood that's lying on the ground. Let's openly admit, Minister, that the bill is a deliberate act of sabotage. That there is a sabotage going on of the natural cycle, there's a sabotage going on of the conservation consensus, and where there's a sabotage going on of honest politics, and there's a sabotage of the processes of this House. Yet again, we're in urgency because these people don't want to talk about it, don't want to hear what anyone else thinks about it, and thinks that only the people in this room have the right to make a decision on this. Well, we don't. A real participatory democracy would include the people who might want to participate, especially people who have been concerned about how we manage our forests and who might want to have a say on either side of the debate. Well, they're not going to get the chance. However, there are so many things wrong with the bill that I could spend a lot of time on it, but I'd just like to just comment on a couple of things. I think that the drafting is extraordinary when you put it in the context of the regulatory impact statement. It's very clear from the RIS that nobody believed the Minister that this was a good idea and that it was drafted in such a way that it went against the recommendations of the regulatory impact statement. The statement is full of attachments from scientists who say this is not going to work, and for everyone in this House who's incapable of understanding that things that fall down and die aren't natural and therefore we have to clean it up and sell it because it hasn't got a function, go back to your Ecology Class 101 and do a little bit of study about how nature actually works and how forests regenerate. If you really want to talk about conservation, let's talk about it. But nobody on the government side has talked about conservation. There has been no authoritative statement, no willingness to talk about it, no commitment to addressing it, and no interest in discussing it. It's all been about, can we make money out of this? Can we ignore the 27-year consensus? And so the results of this are going to be a disaster for the political relationships. It's going to be a disaster for the environment and also for the Department of Conservation in their invidious position. No longer the guardians, now I think they've got a whole new role to play. And that whole new role to play between the miners and the loggers is going to be a great role for them if they had thought they'd signed on to be commercial managers under a different government department. But I feel sorry for everyone who thought they were here to do conservation, because it's over and it's wrong, but it will not in the end prevail. In the end, the people who laid down the kaupapa for this nation, that we valued our environment, we valued our conservation land, and that we valued the people who were prepared to stick their necks out, some who risked arrest to protect those forests, that those people weren't doing it for fun, they were doing it for mokopuna katoa, future generations. If we don't look after it, who are we? If, Mr. Speaker, we don't look after the environment for future generations, what are we? If we don't commit to recognising how nature works at the time when this planet faces the greatest crisis it's ever faced, what are we? We are the greedy, the short-term and the selfish, and the Green Party will never sign on to that. We have a better vision, and we know it is shared by many citizens tonight who are watching this Parliament and who are noting the votes and who are listening to the rhetoric and who are checking who is talking about the conservation values and who is busy trying to count up money and who is busy trying to distract and who are busy trying to make political capital as opposed to standing up for what is really important. There has been very little discussion of the real issues. There was no select committee process to allow the experts in this country who have given their lives to study the way the forest works. There's been very little respect for them. And there's been lots of remarks about making things better for the people on the West Coast in the most disingenuous manner possible. And you only have to read, sorry, Mr. Speaker, one only has to read Rebecca McVie's dreadful tale of the betrayal of the people at Pike River to know that the corporate agenda doesn't look after the workers or the environment. And that because in this bill there's a work plan required, that means nothing. A work plan was required every single time the environmental agreements have been breached in this country. It's been under a work plan. Let us get real. Let us give the power back to the Department of Conservation to do their job, back to the people of this country to have that consensus that was so fought for and treasured. We stand for those values. We know we're not alone. And if you look at the polls, I'm very proud to see our poll tonight. People are responding to us because we know what we stand for and we will not give up. I think, Mr. Speaker, that the Department of Conservation deserves an apology from this House. We are very sorry that we have ruined the mandate which this House once created for them. We are now in an invidious place. But the people of this country will not forget. You cannot force us back to the 18th century. We will not go. A tree is so much more than just the money that you can get from chopping it up. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Members, this debate is concluded. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote's been called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
32 votes opposed, 2 votes in favour.
Green Party.
11 votes against.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Maori Party.
2 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 against.
United
1
Future.
vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 vote in favour.
Any other votes?
Members, the ayes are 65, the noes are 51. The motion is agreed to.
West Coast Windblown Timber Conservation Lands Bill, third reading.
Members, the House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 1st of July 2014. Good evening.